Welcome to my latest brainchild, animated movie posters. It's like a wild ride through my private cinematic cosmos. And you're more than welcome to join me for this journey. Now, if you're wondering what sparked this quirky adventure, check out the full story in the link I dropped below. I'm going to dive headfirst into After Effects and its gang of plugins to make my visions pop. But hey, let's keep those expectations in check, shall we? So what's the deal with this animated poster, you ask? Well, I'm going to go back into my favorite films, hunt down the perfect aha moment and give it a lively spin. Think of them almost like a mini love letters to cinema greatness. Oh, and as a fair warning, some spoilers may sneak in, so make sure to watch the movie first. Now, about these tutorials, they are not your typical step-by-step guides. No, more like a freewheeling discussion with a sprinkle of gossip, a dash of dry humor, as you know me, and hopefully a nugget or two of wisdom. But hey, I'm all ears to hear your ideas and critiques as I unleash these babies into the wild. Alrighty, enough chit-chat. Let's dive into the first movie poster tribute for They Live. Lights, camera, action. Okay, so They Live is a sci-fi action horror film from 1988 directed by John Carpenter. It follows a drifter who discovers special sunglasses that reveal the true nature of the ruling class, who are actually aliens manipulating humanity through subliminal messages. With the glasses, he joined the resistance to expose the aliens' control and awaken others to the truth. The movie is based on a 1963 short story, 8 o'clock in the morning by Ray Nelson. It's really short, only 6 pages, so if you have time, I highly recommend reading it. Anyway, I adore John Carpenter's work, and this one is no exception. I also love all the artwork that was created for this film. In fact, in my living room I have an alternative version of this movie poster that I grabbed at Comic-Con a few years ago. A daily reminder of my deep admiration for Carpenter's work. So when I decided to create my version, I started in Illustrator and created this artwork inspired by a few posters that I found on the internet floor. There are many more, but I ended up with these 6 options, none of which, by the way, is the official poster, just in case you are curious. And this one in the lower corner is the print that I have on my wall downstairs. Looks nice, doesn't it? Anyhow, I created the alien face piece by piece using this muted color scheme. And the plan was to use the relatively new 3D inflate option to bloat the image, the vectors in this case, and give it some volume, and then export it with its texture to After Effects, where I can orbit around it and zoom out or maybe zoom in while revealing the important message of the movie, which is of course obey, followed by the name of the title and the director. So I separated the text elements to their own layer, as well as the movie title, which I converted to outline so I can punch a hole into the letters and then distorted it into this collar shape. Now I knew that I must include the sunglasses image somehow, as this is a major part of the movie. I remind you that wearing these unique sunglasses allow you to spot the aliens. As I told you, there are going to be some spoilers here. And if you haven't seen the movies, I'm just going to destroy part of it for you. Or maybe you are just an alien and you are still obeying. Never mind, I'm drifting. So as I said, I knew that I wanted to use the sunglasses, but I didn't have a clue on how and where. So I left it for a later stage in hope to somehow find a solution when I'm working on it. Maybe it will present itself, who knows. This is a bad idea, but I'm on a time frame, so let's just move on. So what I forgot to tell you, by the way, are the technical limitation that I've put in place for this project and the one that will follow. So here they are. I set the size of the poster to 1400 by 1800 pixels, which is based on the same aspect ratio of a printed poster, but it doesn't conform to any common social size. Oh yes, I want to be different. The length of the animation shouldn't exceed 10 seconds, and I must execute it using only After Effects. Now, plugins are allowed, and I can use any software I want to create and prepare elements, but I must animate everything and composite the final result inside After Effects. And the reason for this is because we are under a tight deadline. The animation should be completed in less than 3 hours. Now, there are a few exceptions that I've managed to squeeze into this very tough client imaginary brief. For example, the R&D and render time should be considered not part of the deadline. The motto I'm embracing here is creativity loves a good straitjacket. Okay, so now that we know all the boring stuff, let's put it to the test. And this brings us to the main event of this tutorial, creating 3D models from Illustrator. Now, I discovered it by taking the long way home, but since I respect your time, assuming you are still here with me, I'll save you the guessing work and tell you that you need to create a unified 3D object from all the vectors if you want to bring them together to After Effects and then apply shadows and interact with other 3D models. So to do this, we'll need to group everything and only then apply the inflate operation from the 3D and material panel. Now, if you're going to take a look at the appearance panel here, after I'll select the group, you'll see that by doing so, we have a single instance of the 3D and materials effect applied to everything, which is going to be much easier to manage. And of course, it will also register as one single 3D object when we'll export it to After Effects. But before doing that, let's make sure that we are using the front preset and then change the depth to 30 and tick inflate both sides. Now, as you can see, every little change that I'll make here will be followed by a progress bar, which makes this process a bit tedious. But will also save you tons of time and manual labor comparing to modeling this alien face in 3D app like Blender, Cinema 4D, or whatever you're using. So I'm going to say that it is worth the wait time. I also recommend not to play with this articulated model here inside Illustrator unless you have a very beefy machine. We'll do all the fancy 3D stuff inside After Effects. So now let's export the model, and for that I'm going to say goodbye to the 3D and material panel, and then I'll go to the layers panel, select this group and click on this tiny icon which will send this layer to the asset export panel after showing us, of course, another progress bar. Over here, I'm going to change the format to GLTF, and then I'll click on Export, choose my destination, and zip another cup of tea, coffee, water, or beer, whatever makes you happy while you are watching another progress bar filling just in front of you. Now, before we'll switch to After Effects, I will revert this document back to its original state because this is what I need inside After Effects to animate. If you want, you can save a copy of this version with the 3D model, but for me it's unnecessary because it will actually slow down my process inside After Effects if I'll import a 3D layer which is now a 3D object inside Illustrator. So this is my recommendation. Inside After Effects, I'll start by importing the GLTF 3D model, which will come in its own folder. We're going to return to it in a moment, but now I'll import the multi-layer Illustrator document and I'll create a comp out of it, setting the footage dimensions to the layer size. I'll open this composition and verify that it is set to 10 seconds long, and here you can choose your favorite frame rate. So I'll set mine to 30 frames per second. Next, I'll drag the 3D model, and using this dialog box that I'm seeing on screen, I'll scale it to be more or less the same size as the original layer. So let's go with 500%. I'll click OK, and then I'll move it to place using position, and of course if I need I can scale it up, and I can also switch off the visibility of the original alien face logo. Now I'm going to convert the background layer to a 3D layer so it can interact with the model, and I'm also going to send it back in Z space to, let's say, 120 and compensate by scaling it up so it will fill the screen. This will help us when we are going to enable lights and shadows. So you know what, actually let's do it now. I'll add an environment light with 100% intensity and cast shadows turned on, and make sure that all 3D layers are in the same bin, meaning one under the other. And this means that no 2D layers are in between them. And if you are doing so, 2D layers are going to break the render, so they can cause the shadows not to render. Anyhow, now that I said it correctly, I think I can have a look at it, and I think it looks quite cool. But we need to bring the text layers, and of course, don't forget, the sunglasses. Let's begin with the movie title. I'll select the They Live layer and convert it to shapes so I can extrude these vectors by choosing Create Shapes from Vector Layer. Then I'll convert the layer itself to 3D and drag it above the alien face. I'll open its geometry options and I'll set the extrusion depth to 1000 and the bevel style to convex. Later, I'm planning to animate the Z position, making the title slide into its place from the front or in front of the camera. But now let's bring the other text layers, which are still live type inside Illustrator. And for that, you have a few ways to work. One way is to return to Illustrator, and if you have it, you can use the Overload plugin or extension, which is of course a paid one. And this is going to help you send vectors and native text layers from Illustrator directly to After Effects, and by the way, vice versa. However, if you don't own it, you can also use copy and paste. So I'll select the Obey text layer and copy it to the clipboard by pressing, of course, Command C. Then I'll switch back to After Effects and create a new text layer by pressing Command Option Shift T. Now I can press Command V and paste this text, which is going to bring everything. So the font, the leading, the tracking, everything survived. Let's return back to Illustrator and repeat the same process for the John Carpenter's text. So I'll copy it from AI, which is Adobe Illustrator, and then switch back to After Effects, create a new text layer, and paste the text over here. Now I need to convert these titles to 3D layers, and then place them in the desired position. So to do it, I'll click on the Draft 3D button. This is going to turn off the shadows, but everything now is going to work in real time, so I can quickly extrude the titles and place them where they need to be. I'll start with the Obey text, which I'm going to drag 80 pixels closer to us, so -80, and I'll do it only on its Z-axis, of course, which is also Z-axis or Zod if you're coming from a DC world.
Kneel before Zod!
I'm also going to hold down the Command key and double-click on the Pan Behind tool, and this is going to center the anchor point in the middle of the text, which is going to help me animate it later. I'll set the extrusion for it to 400 and place it just between the eyes. Again, the plan here is to animate the position of the layer over time, which is going to be added to a simple camera motion. Okay, I'll now attend to the director's name. I'll start by setting the anchor point to the middle of the layer using the same keyboard shortcut, so Command double click while pressing on the anchor tool or the pan behind, and then I'll drag it above the alien's head here. I'll try to place it as closer to the head as possible, so maybe -50 on the Z, and finally I'll set its extrusion to 200 and lower it again almost until it will touch the head of the alien. I also want to override the side color for this object. So I'll add a side color animator to this text. And in this instance, I think I'm going to leave the default Adobe Red color because after all, this is a horror movie. Now that all the layers are in place, we can animate the camera. But hey, something is still missing. Of course, we need to add the sunglasses model. So as usual, I found this 3D model of sunglasses on Sketchfab. This is courtesy of Gina Bin. I need to learn how to read. And the only issue here is that I need to integrate it, of course, into the story. Now, the role of the sunglasses in the movie is critical. By wearing them, as I already told you, you can tell who is human and who is alien. But since I don't have any human here, I decided to betray the movie plot and just wear it on the alien face. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can I do this? It is so offensive and I'm just basically destroying the entire story. And I must admit, it's also a stupid move. But I don't care. I just want the sunglasses to be in the poster. So I'll bring them into this composition and then I'm going to move them forward. So they are going to be in front of the alien face and then scale down this model and place them on the alien face nose. So something like this. Yeah, doesn't make sense, but yeah, deal with it. Okay, now it's time to create the camera and animate it, as well as maybe also animate all the relevant layers. So everything is going to converge together. So since I already explained my intention and animating the camera is something that I showed you a million times before, so I'm going to save the trouble and just go to this composition where I already animated the camera and the relevant object. And this is starting from an extreme close-up of the face and then pulling out while, as I promised, some of the text layers are settling into their places. I also added some easy using the graph editor, and to add continuous motion to the camera, I've used my favorite trick, which is animating the zoom value. So after the animation finishes, the camera still moves slowly, just to make sure that I'm following the golden rule of motion graphics, which is every pixel must move until the end. Stupid rule, but also makes sense, I suppose. Okay, perfect. I'm happy from what I'm seeing, and now it's time to render this comp. So since I'm using the advanced 3D renderer, there are a few limitations we should take under account. First, the quality and the shadow settings. You can get to those by visiting the renderer options settings, and I landed on these settings. Render quality is set to 10, shadows resolution is half in my case, and the smoothness is 3. The casting box size is 1500, and you can read the X, Y, Z values, and those numbers are going to obviously change according to the size of your composition and the distance between the 3D layers. You can also notice, hopefully through the YouTube compression, that the result that I'm getting is very noisy and super sharp. I'll show you how to remedy this in a moment, but what's important is that using these render settings, the render time is relatively fast. I'll open up the render queue and show you that I've already rendered this, and on my MacBook Pro M1 Max, this took approximately 20 minutes to finish, which is reasonable. So now I can drag the render file back from the render queue to the project and create a new composition from this file. I'll start by duplicating the layer, and to this duplicate, I'll apply the Depth Scanner plugin. Now, this is a third-party effect that uses artificial intelligence to create an estimated depth map. You can learn more about it if you want by visiting the affiliate link below. And if I'll just show you this layer, you can see the outcome of this effect. Now, you can tune up these settings as you need, but I found out that for the most part, it does a really good job with the default settings. So I'm going to leave everything as is and go and select the upper copy. So I will enable it, and then I'll apply to it the camera lens blur effect. I'll set the blur map to the layer below, and I'm going to take under account the effects and masks. I'll also invert the map and then click to create a keyframe for the blur focal distance because I want to create a rack focus effect. So by the end, I want to make everything almost in full focus. I'll start by using a value of 15 for the blur radius at the beginning of this composition, and I'll set a keyframe for it as well. Then I'll move the playhead to 7 seconds where the animation settles in and change the blur radius to 2 and the blur focal distance to 120. I don't want to take the radius all the way to 0 because I don't like it to be so sharp and synthetic. And I also want to try and hide some of the noise artifacts that we got using those low render settings. So let's preview it and see how this looks. Quite nice, I must say. Now, I also added a sound for this, but since it is based on the original movie theme, I'm not going to risk it over here. Instead, you can listen to it on my other socials. And by the way, if you like this video, maybe just like it and also add a comment. I hear that each one of these can really help to grow small channels like mine. So again, thank you so much for your support. Anyhow, this is it for this one. I hope this short journey was entertaining and maybe also you learned something new. Thank you as always for sticking until the end, and I will see you in the next one.